Hi, everyone. This is Marshall Dawson, and this is the second sit-down conversation I had with Dave Walden as we prepare for his upcoming book to be published. As you'll see, we'll cover topics like feedback from the first video, and we touch a little bit on the music industry. But in the meantime, let's get on with the conversation. By the way, that was left over from...
If you do it again, keep it.
All right. The last time that we were down there, I think I had 50 cents left over. And I kept that too.
Good, good. I'm glad it covers it at least.
Yeah.
Well, I wore this because I had lunch with my daughter like I do every week. And she liked me wearing it. So I'm wearing it again.
Oh, you mean she saw the recording last time? And yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's seen the whole recording.
I picked up the names on your sleeve there.
Oh,
so
you did?
I figured out what was going on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, good. I think it's good to be dressed appropriately.
Have you had a chance to read any of that next book I gave you?
It's sitting right there. It hasn't moved, but
okay. Well, I'm just curious. That's an interesting title of a book right there.
The one next to it? Yeah. It's been a couple of weeks since I've picked it up. I'm halfway through it right now.
You like it?
It's eye-opening. The guy's name is Gavin DeBecker. I'd seen him on with Mike Rowe. I assume you know.
Mike Rowe, okay.
Yeah. And the book and the content that he was talking about are... He doesn't attempt to say that vaccines don't work. He doesn't attempt to say that they cause autism or other, chronic diseases. But he tries to ask questions about how do we know that they're safe? Who says that they're safe? We always hear that, any notion that they're not safe has been thoroughly debunked. Okay, who debunked it? What data did they use to debunk it with? So that's kind of the basis of the first half. And then he also goes quite a bit into statistics and, who's dying from what and where, what parts of the world, that type of thing.
Well, I can't tell you specifically why. I can tell you generally. But in early 2020, I got the first two COVID shots. Kaiser, my insurance company, had urged the most vulnerable of its customers, older people, right? Or people with some sort of comorbidity, whatever that might have been defined as, to get the shots. And they made them available to them first. And I got the first two. So did Julie. But something along that time caused me to not get any more. And it was generally the information that was continuing to come out that represented the start of what has become a widespread questioning of the previously unquestionable.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my initial sources of information came from something called the Great Barrington.
Right.
Okay. And I was a recipient of that, and then from that led to other things, to where now I think the general suspicion is that the pharmaceutical industrial complex has wrested control of the government, as those of us who understand the nature and roles of government believe is normal, because that's what happens when you create an authority to look after you. Someone will head that off and be looking after your interests in the name of that authority or whatever. Anyway, so I'd be interested in reading it after you're finished.
I think it was, that period of time was real awakening for me. I had planned on getting the vaccine. I can't remember if I told you, my father is a physician, and believed strongly in kind of that top-down messaging that all doctors were getting. So I believed that I was going to get the vaccine, but I was in very good health, a bit thinner. I was riding my bike quite a bit because they wouldn't let us do anything else at that time, if you recall. And I made a conscious decision, well, I should not be the first in line to get the vaccine. I'll wait. And then we started getting the rumblings of there might be a federal mandate, or a mandate for federal contractors. And I worked for a federal contractor. And for me, that was it's funny, the mandate was the line in the sand. And once I put myself on the far side of that line, then in my head, I was never going to get the vaccine. Never going to. Never did.
Yep.
Do you know, I'm sure you've met him, confident you've met him, Charlie Wynn. He was a physician in Boulder, and he was the CD2 candidate in 2020.
Oh, Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to be a Toastmaster.
That's right.
And he ran for office, and I visited one of his, what do you call those things? Where you,
like a meet and greet or something?
Yeah, meet and greet, and I made a contribution to him. And I remember advising, as I advise people that I get to know sufficiently, to not run for political office. It's been my personal experience once with Bailey, Stephen Bailey, in observing what takes place is it has the potential for ruining the best of us.
So is it getting elected which ruins us, or is it the campaign?
The focus on what happens to human beings when their focus becomes political, and that it enters they end up programming. And if you read my upcoming book, you'll get into some of this. They either consciously or subconsciously teach their subconscious to constantly be on the alert for the political. It's the first and foremost thing that enters their mind. And their subconscious takes them seriously, and it does it. The more greater their ability, the greater their subconscious is in reminding them of their choices, what they want, they claim to want. And I think I told you the story of, I got to know Stephen Bailey through my ex-boss at IBM, Bob Armstrong, because Bob was his treasurer and neighbor on his campaign. That's how he knew him. And Bob told me that I would like him. I ought to come meet him. And I did, and I liked him. And so I went to work for him. The only campaign I ever worked on was Bailey. And I did anything he needed me to do, including, and by the way, I want to tell you about this because my brother-in-law reminded me of this.
Okay.
And that included when he had a commitment that he had made to be at some gathering, but he had made two at the same time inadvertently. I'd go and stand in for him. And he told me I got rave reviews, sometimes better than his reviews. So now he was running for CD2 against Polis, who was the CD2 rep at that time. And he had little chance of winning, and he knew it. And we're over his house one night, stuffing envelopes or something. I don't remember what it was. And he looks up at me. He says, "Dave, what are you going to do if I actually win?" And of course, we both knew that was unlikely. And I said, "Well, Stephen, if you actually win, I'm going to demand a recount." And I said that because it wasn't my line. I had gotten that from the conservative TV guy that was so popular, Buckley, William F. Buckley. He
That's
had
right.
mentioned that when he ran for New York. I think he ran for mayor of New York and lost. And he was asked that question, or he asked it, I don't remember. And that was his response. So I never forgot that. Thought it was a cool response. But I wanted to talk about this. When I sent a copy of the video to my brother that you had done first, brother-in-law, he says, your body language. And I said, really? And of course, I watched it then, and it's true. My body language, not just my arms, it's my face and my eyes, everything. I give myself away. But in the case of this, you know why I do this now? In addition to maybe doing it because I'm somehow guarded, it keeps my hands warm. And as I age, my hands have gotten to where they're cold all the time. And this keeps them warm.
That's interesting. I usually feel like I'm trying to hold myself up, or if I'm standing, I'm keeping myself more up straight. That so, if I'm doing something that's out in public, or Toastmasters or something, I'll actually try to make a point of not having that closed body language. Doesn't matter how cold my hands get.
Yeah, well, I mean, mine have gotten to where I'm actually uncomfortable. I sit in the house now, in Broomfield, and even though the temperature in the house is set at 70, 71 degrees, I have a long sleeve undershirt on as well as a long sleeve overshirt. And one of our friends, because they know that I've gotten to where I'm cold more often than hot, she bought me a heated quilt to keep by the chair there. And I frequently turn that on almost every night if I'm watching the TV.
Yeah.
Part of that aging, consequence of aging.
I'm definitely more cold than I am hot. I mean, you'll see me wearing that fleece. It could be 70 degrees outside. I'm perfectly comfortable in that black fleece. And speaking of body language, going back and watching the videos, I'm really glad that we decided to do that last recording in your kitchen instead of in the other room. I really liked how the lighting came out, which is kind of partly what inspired me to do this recording in here today.
Mm-hmm.
And so back to the body language part, the way that you would sort of peer outside, you've got that open space behind you and looking for the right words, the right way to say the words. I felt like that came over very powerfully on the video.
I got very good compliments from my brother-in-law and my daughter.
Good.
So
Yeah.
you should be pleased.
I'm happy.
Good.
Because, for a lot of effort, it wouldn't take many things to go bad to just kind of spoil all that effort.
Yeah, wouldn't it all?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we talked about the sweatshirt. Did you have anything else on your mind today that we should chat about? I was hoping to take some time and skim back through the first book before you got here, and of course I was running late as well.
What I'd like, there's something on my mind, and it pertains to this. Both you and Francis, our fellow Toastmaster, as you know, Francis has just published his first book, and of course I bought 5 of them to give to myself and others. And I'm in the book, as I told you. And upon nearing finishing the draft of my book, it occurred to me, I don't want to go to whatever the trouble is to turn it into a book. I mean, I've written the draft on Word on my computer, and I think I'd like to get an editor if I could find one to do that for grammar and good, just prose,
Mhm.
good prose. Um, but I haven't. So it occurred to me, because Francis had just published his book. Well, I wonder if Francis would be willing to take my draft files, and because he's been through the process, turn it into what he did with his book. It'd be a lot easier for him than me learning how to do it and doing it. Plus, I don't have I may have the time, but I don't know that I do. And so I've asked him to help, and he has. As I've told you, he's already taken my draft and formatted it for me in the format that he did with his book. And of course, I'm envisioning, but I haven't talked to him sufficiently to know if that's the case. But I was envisioning, once I turned it over to him and I was satisfied with the contents, that it was more or less a turnkey. No, I'd have to give him a check for whatever Amazon charges for whatever copies I want. But that's what I had envisioned. And then you came up with this idea, which immediately appealed to me. And it's appealed to everyone who knows about it now. But I know that that's going to present some sort of complication to Francis, and maybe he to you. I don't know. And so that's why I want you to talk with him, and you've agreed to at Saturday's or after Saturday's Toastmaster meeting. So that's on my mind.
I texted Francis last night because I needed something else from him as well. But so primed him for that conversation that we're going to have on Saturday.
Oh, great.
I really hope it's not going to be a big deal.
Yeah, me too.
Somebody mentioned that Microsoft Word is capable of generating QR codes on its own. And to me, it seems like the only complication could be, like in this book we were just talking about, how difficult is it to line up those QR codes at the bottom of the page as footnotes?
Okay. So really, it's a basic potential problem, one that you would think is simple.
It's not overcomable. I said that wrong. It's nothing that can't be overcome.
It's just how much trouble you have to go through to do it.
Right.
It's, much of life is like that.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law and I always seem to have ongoing, interesting discussions, and it's centered around the fact that he's a Christian and I am not, and we have the greatest relationship. Just it's better than mine and Julie's dad's relationship, much better, but it's along the same lines of mutual respect and admiration, and it's a great relationship. It reaffirms my belief that we human beings have far, far, far more in common than not, and yet we frequently allow what we don't have in common to dominate our thinking.
That's the national pastime.
Yeah, it's become one for sure.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I've heard you talk about your brother-in-law before, and hearing you say that just right now, it makes me think that that's probably a mark of somebody who's intellectually curious, because you can have strong relationships with people who are just like you, and that doesn't take a whole lot of depth on your part. You can be sort of a shallow person, and you're really chummy.
Right.
But I think it takes a special kind of person to be able to have a strong relationship with somebody who's perhaps a little bit unlike what they are.
Well, earlier, I won't say early because I've now known him for 35 years. But earlier in our relationship, we both identified around the same time a common denominator in our values. And just like myself later in life, and Mark I would say later in life, and I hesitate to speak for him. We both seek truth, and we tend not to flinch in the face of it. And we share that common denominator. We also share a number of other things, but that was discovered earlier in our relationship, and it stood us well. And I could give you an example, and will, that involved the first video. And we covered something that I think I left it out of the written contents of the book, and it was about a visit that I made to my parents. This was in the 80s, the early to mid 80s. I don't remember exactly when, but as I had indicated in the other video, a girl that I was involved with at the time, and I flew my airplane with the intent of going to Hilton Head from Boulder. And it was near North Carolina where my mom and dad had moved. And so I just thought we'd stop in and pay him a visit. So I diverted to forget the town in North Carolina on our way to Hilton Head. And my parents had grown to be unhappy with each other in their marriage, particularly my mom. So that what would happen when I would visit, and this was after a period when I hadn't visited them, but they had come out to visit me when I transferred to Colorado in a while. And I got there, and they were so glad to see me, and they met Jan. And the next morning, I got up early because they both get up early. Jan, I think, was still in bed at the time. And I went out in the kitchen. Mom had prepared coffee and everything. The three of us are sitting there at the table. And almost immediately after all the perfunctory greetings and tidings were passed, Dad would get up and leave. And Mom would start talking about how terrible it was what Dad did and didn't do, and her life would be so much better if it wasn't for him and his ways. And she was just absolutely irritated with it. And of course, he'd then wait for her to leave, and he'd come in, or we'd get together, and he'd talk about her in the same fashion. Not as overtly and harshly, but the same thing. So I ended up, as I indicated in the video, getting them both in the kitchen at the same time, and essentially explaining to them that I came to visit because I wanted to enjoy their company. And I did not enjoy what they were doing with me individually when they'd find me alone. And I called it peeing in my ear. And I didn't like that. Yeah. And I said, each of you has to decide what's more important to you. Do you want to pee in my ear because that's what you want to do most when you see me? Or do you want the three of us, either each of us independently, each of you independently, or all of us together, enjoy the visit together? And of course, when I said that, led by my mother, they were shocked that that's what I thought. And I mean, how could you think such a thing, son, or whatever? And of course, I articulated that further so that there was no escape from it. Gave them examples, and that they ended up, to their credit, at least making an effort not to do that. I could tell. But they ended up doing it, and I just came to accept it as part of the relationship, even though it took away from whatever I might be getting out Now, as you know, I mentioned that in the video.
Right.
Well, after Mark watched that, and we're talking on the phone, and he wants to meet you, by the way. He said, "You know what's fascinating to me, Dave?" He said, "You did exactly the opposite of what I would have done in that situation." And I said, "Really, Mark? Tell me what you would have done." And he essentially, now I'm going to be putting words in his mouth, and I hope I get it right. But he said, "Well, I'm a peacemaker, a problem solver. I would have got them both and sat them down and said, how can I help resolve this?" Whereas you took the opposite tack to that. Here's what I'm going to do if you don't do X, Y, and Z. And we talked about that because it was a fascinating discussion. And it leads directly to aspects of the content of my next book, because Mark is operating from a different set of philosophical principles and beliefs than am I. Even though that difference, while be fundamental, it leads to how we would handle that situation differently. Now, I don't pretend to claim mine is objectively superior. I don't know if Mark would claim his is objectively superior. But I have decided that whether it is or not is not relevant to me. And if it isn't, well, explain to me why, and I'll explain to you why it's not. And we haven't gotten to that point.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that I could spur a conversation on that.
Oh, yeah.
And another excuse, right, to kind of dig through some contrasts and maybe some complementing viewpoints as well. And of course, I'm sure that your position came from knowing your parents and their relationship, and their mannerisms, their habits, and whatnot. And Mark wouldn't be able to help, coming from his decision, knowing his parents.
Right. Now, the point he was making is that were that the case with his parents, his tact would have been opposite mine.
Yeah.
And of course, while I can't say, well, you shouldn't have done that, I mean, any more than he would say to me, Dave, you shouldn't have done that, I would say that what is critical is context, as context is critical in everything. Mm-hmm. The context of his parents is that the likelihood of that coming up in his family was almost
close
zero.
To zero, yeah.
Where in my family, it was the leitmotif. When you take into what would Mark have done if he had experienced that leitmotif? Well, he presumes that he would have done the same thing. Au contraire, I would argue, right? And the same would apply vice versa. I've already thought about our next conversation to some degree and where I want it to go, because I'm curious as to his response, as I'm sure he remains curious to mine if I want to go further. That's part of our joy of relationship.
Yeah. Now, thinking about, what would you do in each other's scenarios? Either you might have gotten steamrolled if you had taken your own approach in someone else's family, if you were part of that family.
Now, if you like, Marshall, I don't know if you like is the right start of this, because what I'm talking about in this subject and example, as I indicated, is the contents of part of the contents of my next book. Human beings are incredibly wonderful creatures. They possess the power of reason, but they also possess emotions. And that makes them fascinatingly complex.
They have the power not to reason as well.
They have the choice not to
Yeah.
reason. That's exactly right. Matter of fact, you talk about free will, and my inspiration, my intellectual inspiration, Ayn Rand, she specifically says that free will comes down to the power to choose to think or not. And everyone has it. It doesn't matter their genes, it doesn't matter their environment. They retain that power. They're in volitional control of that. And they can decide not to, or they can decide to do so. And of course, their subconscious will give them a printout, whatever they decide. And they'll have to decide if the printout.
Oh, that's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm looking forward to the next conversation with Mark. Now he's had a real serious shoulder injury, and he's going through rehab right now, so he's unavailable at times. Plus, he has his own life to live with a lot of grandkids and kids, and they're all close by. So he and his wife Karen are involved in that. So whenever that conversation is, I'll look forward to it.
Yeah. How many extended family members do you have? Just the one brother-in-law?
No, Julie and Mark have a sister and cousins. They all, the sister, Joan, has 2 children, both of which are married, who have children. Mark has 3 children, each of which is married, and who in turn have children. So he has grandchildren, both of them do. And that's about it. I don't have very much of a relationship with her sister or her sister's husband or children. There are reasons for that, but we don't need to go into them in this.
It was your brother Scott, right?
Scott,
Who you talked about. Do you have any nieces and nephews on?
Scott
on
is
your
not
side of the
married.
family?
He's 17 years my younger. He was essentially born after I had left for the Air Force. So I really didn't get to know him except when I'd come home when he was a baby, or then visit when I was married to my first wife. We'd stop in, and that's the only time I've ever spent with him to speak of. Now, he's come to Colorado a couple times. He came for Dad's services after Dad died. He came to Rhode Island after my mother died in Rhode Island and visited. But I really don't know him very well, nor he me.
The reason I asked, I took that last conversation that we had and cut those up into smaller clips. And I can show you what that looks like. But anyway, part of that was your conversation about, I guess it's toward the end of talking about credentials and the value of college. And he had gone to college. He was the one who went to college.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
he was the only one. And frankly, it sounded like, I don't know for sure, but it sounded like he deserved it. And having deserved it and earned his degree, he's done well with it.
Yeah.
Like I think I told you on the phone, he's apparently a go-to guy for the underwriters of mortgage money, and he is sought for that reason. He's competent.
Yeah, so that was fresh in my mind. I just finished editing those yesterday, so I'll show you what that looks like. As I say, this has been actually pretty fun for me.
Good.
I had learned to use Premiere Pro, which is the video editing software. Learned to use that a while back. Not very well, just could hack around, but been entertaining getting to know that again. And of course, with all the new stuff that's been released in the interim, like the transcript, right? I sent you I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but that was generated by AI right out of the tool. It just goes.
Yeah,
and
I
reads
did.
it.
I wondered why you sent me that. I didn't care for it.
Oh,
Now, why didn't I care for it? Well, I couldn't make sense of it at times.
I didn't go through and double check its accuracy.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's-
Well, that's powerful, obviously, right? So when I say what I say, I understand how powerful potentially that is. Many a time I've wished my words could be transcribed accurately into text. Um, one of my beliefs is that the voice is ephemeral. If you want something that's timeless, you have to put it down in text. It's like past civilizations. Though we potentially have the technology now to turn sound from ephemeral into timelessness, all civilizations prior to ours did not have that capability. And the only way that we knew that they were, quote, a civilization and, quote, advanced was from what they wrote down. And we could then read, whether it's scribbles on the cave wall or whether it's text, actual words. That gets into a whole host of things. And as you know, when you get me into a conversation, there's no telling where it's going to go. I'm a dog lover. It's part of my interest and fascination in other life. Now, if you're a dog owner, and perhaps it's the same with cats, I wouldn't deny it. I've had cats, not in recent years, but I've had a number of them. Sometimes you look at them and they look at you, and you wonder what's going on in there. I mean, we presume that they don't reason, and yet they display behavior that seems to be motivated by emotion. Right? They act sometimes like they're feeling things that when you see other humans or you feel them, that's what you would do and look like as you're feeling them. And Terry and I touched on this with horses and so forth, and it was superficial, and we ended up disagreeing, right? But language is one of the key pieces of evidence that confirms thought, values, right? Now, does a dog have values? Well, they value eating and drinking, and they value being petted and held and talked to. They seem to get excited, and be shy away when they're fearful.
Well, they could have more values than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the language that we can understand.
Well, my point simply is you're right.
Yeah.
But language is the great confirmer, right? If a creature has the ability to communicate with other creatures, particularly those that are not like him, like we can communicate with dogs and cats and horses and whatever, but if they're communicating with us consciously or just responding to instinct, we can't tell. We can presume, and I will acknowledge, I'll be the first one because they fascinate me so. I mean, one of the first articles I wrote when I thought that I might be a Substack writer was when Levert, my beloved dog, died. And I wrote a eulogy on Substack titled Levert. Matter of fact, my email name is Levert, D.W. Levert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wondered where that came from.
Yeah, it came from the fact that Levert is apparently, I say apparently because my wife came up with it, or her sister, I don't remember which, came up with lievert because that's a Dutch word, supposedly, for loved one. So we named lievert Lievert. And so when he died, I wrote an eulogy about his death and what he meant to me, and put it on Substack as my first article there. And I did that because of what I'm talking about with respect to Lievert's effect on me and my endless thoughts and curiosity over what was going on inside Lievert's head, if anything, other than, the normal presumption of stuff. Anyway, we came to that because I made the claim that writing is a timeless form of awareness of what's the history of people and civilizations, as opposed to sound. But of course, that's starting to change.
I thought about this a bit. Sound, video, whatever, right? I mean, what are ways that one could be remembered, if not forever, for some period of time? I don't read many books or articles that were, published from, let's say, 1930 to 1950 or 60 or 70.
But if you wanted to.
But I listen to a lot of music. I watch a lot of movies, TV shows, things like that.
But if you wanted to read them, you could.
Yeah.
Now, if someone was a songwriter and came up with a song and recorded it on their guitar in their basement, and that's the only place they did it, they didn't, I say record, they played it, but they didn't record it, well, it's gone.
Yeah.
You never know about it. I mean, you say those things, you don't do that. Well, have you read Aristotle?
I don't think I have.
Okay.
I could.
How about Homer?
No.
And all I'm saying is that because they wrote it down and it's been preserved through whatever means. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of my, when people that want to discuss our founding and the history of humanity, one of my key points in humanity's journey is the works of Aristotle. Well, when the Peloponnesian War was over in Greece, and Alexander the Great conquered the known world during his early life, or brief life, I don't know what Aristotle may have had in the library at Alexandria that was part of the legacy of that period of history. But there could have been a bunch of his stuff that was destroyed when the library was destroyed. My next big milestone after the fall of Rome and we entered the Dark Ages was Thomas of Aquinas, the Catholic, whatever his term or title was in Catholicism. He decided it was important for the Catholic Church to understand what he had come to understand about Aristotle. So he translated the works of Aristotle from Greek to Latin. And the Catholic Church was introduced to the works of Aristotle. And the zeitgeist, as Thomas uses, was reintroduced to it. And of course, I will argue that set in motion a causal chain that was irreversible, the zenith of which perhaps was the founding of America. And so the written word is far more important in my mind than the verbal word, because it's fleeting.
And I wasn't disagreeing, but I do think that you're right when it comes to ideas. It's quite possible that I got to think about this driving and listening to an old song or something. And yeah, when it comes to communicating powerful ideas, I can't disagree that the written word is more relevant there.
Well, think about the God of Abraham. If the Old Testament had not become written, and the only thing that was written was the Torah,
Yeah.
okay, and then if the New Testament hadn't gotten written, well, what would the consequences of that be?
Yeah. I think I was probably personalizing this a bit more. And I think you were speaking very broad, or
Yeah.
not broadly, but in colossal terms.
Abstract rather than
Yeah.
concrete.
How will I be remembered? And I'll surely be dead in 50 years. Let's say 75. Am I going to write something that's powerful and moving and changes the world? It's probably not going to happen. Am I going to give a speech? Let's assume that I was going to run for office again. Okay, well, there's a possibility, but as you say, it's fleeting, right? Once you speak it, it's over. Unless somebody's there transcribing it or recording it, it's kind of gone. The feeling's left over, and that's when I kind of came back around to music. And
Music's timeless.
If you record yourself, yeah, it's recorded. Is it meaningful? Are people going to be talking about that in 75 years? They'll be talking about the Beatles. We're talking about the Rolling Stones still.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I was a musician for a while, and invariably when I tell that to somebody who's interested in musicians and music and so forth, they'll say, "Did you record anything?" And I go, "No, not really." And we didn't.
Yeah.
Now, we tried, but we weren't good enough, I don't think. And we really didn't, I mean, it's hard to imagine, but we really didn't have the motivation to do it because we were thinking about earning a living, the next gig, and I don't think of all five of us, I don't think we were dedicated enough to doing other than what we were doing on stage 6 nights a week, traveling to the next gig, using our personal time to, we'd learn new songs, but rarely was that really exciting, although at times it was. People who aren't musicians, they look at that life and think how glamorous it is. And wow, wouldn't it be great to do that for a living? And it was, but always in context. I remind people that I was more or less an unofficial leader of the band. No one ever made me that, but I more or less became that. And in addition to the band and playing on stage in a club in front of audiences, you had to listen to 4 other guys tell you about how they didn't want to play there again, wherever there was, or they wanted to take a week off when the other 3 didn't. The point being, there were 5 people whose values had to coalesce to the point where you were all on stage 6 nights a week earning the money you were being paid. And if you weren't, that affected all 5, but maybe only one of them, that's what they wanted to do at that time. And of course, I had to negotiate with the club owners and our agent. And so there was a lot of, shall I say, non-glamorous things about it.
I think there are many things that are worthwhile that have non-glamorous components to them.
Of course.
Did you all have any original music, or were you playing
One song
covers?
that I wrote.
Okay.
I don't know where it is. I may have it still somewhere. I don't know. I
Uh,
haven't looked in a long time.
I'm just wondering about the recording. If you were going to record, would you go into a studio to do original music?
No, never did that. But we did have somebody in one of the clubs record us one time. And it was during a time when several of us had smoked some weed.
Hmm.
And when we listened to that recording straight, we were awful. I mean, we sounded terrible. And I never smoked again after that. Now, a couple of the guys did, but and that was another problem, right? I mean,
Yeah, dealing with people is it's
now there were advantages. One of the people that came into the club in Huntsville that we played at, he owned the Dodge dealership in Huntsville. And he found out that I wanted a new car. And he gave me a great deal on a Dodge Charger, 68 Dodge Charger. And so that was a benefit, right? I don't know how much I could have got it for without, but I got it for a sweetheart price from him.
I don't know. The microphones are going to pick it up. There's a woodpecker, apparently. I don't know if you can hear it.
Mm-hmm. I can hear it.
When I'm inside, it sounds like he's pecking on the house. When I'm outside, it sounds like he's pecking on a neighbor's house. So, I don't know what to think. Let's see. Good. Now I'm going to be focused on that noise. Maybe I was just going to bring it back to, having something out there that you're known for after you're done doing whatever it is that you do.
No, there's nothing that I'm aware of anywhere. I've often wondered about the numbers of people that heard us and that we played at places quite often. Like our favorite place to play was Huntsville. And Huntsville, for whatever reason, we liked the area, the people loved us, and we were paid well there. We filled the clubs, two of them in particular that we played at. And I'll tell you a story I don't think it's in the book. As I've indicated previously, the hardest thing about doing this book was what to include and what to leave out. And I don't know if I got it right. I just know what I did. And maybe this helped. Okay? And this was not at a time when we were playing Huntsville, but my daughter's husband at the time was the sound engineer for the Take Six a cappella group. I don't know if you know who Take Six is, but there's six black guys that are fabulous. Longtime Grammy winners for years. And they still have a great following, and they're popular. Well, as you know from my book, I would go to Georgia from Colorado in the spring and fall, stay for months at a time, and then come back for the summers and winters in Colorado. Well, Tony, Jesse's husband, had a gig with Take Six in Huntsville. And so he invited me to stop in. And I did. And I got there the day that they were setting up to put on their performance at night. And it was in this huge venue. The tables were all set up and everything. And it was decorations around the stage. And there was a big banner up in the ceiling. And huge banner. Well, as we're sitting there and those guys are doing the sound check and Tony's making adjustments and telling them to do this and do that. And they're getting everything ready for the evening's performance. I'm sitting there looking around, and that banner caught my eye because it was so huge across the ceiling, and it said UNCF. And I said, wow, how did they get this gig? And so they finished their sound check, and several of them came and sat at the table with me and Tony. And the other guys were doing something, talking to other people. And I said to one of them, it might have been his name was Claude. I don't remember which one it was. But I said to him, I said, tell me, how did you guys ever land a gig with the United Nations Children's Fund? He looked at me and smiled and put his hand on my shoulder and said, Dave, that's United Negro College Fund. And I was so embarrassed, and I couldn't believe it. But he was, they liked me, I liked them. They knew I loved their music. And Tony was probably more embarrassed than I was. Okay? But that was, during that visit, I rode around Huntsville and found one of the clubs that was still there. It wasn't called that, and the surroundings had changed, but the building was there, owned by new owners and everything. Now, this is in the 2006 or 8 or something, right?
Yeah.
When we were there, it was in the 60s, but that building was still there. Now, the other club was gone. There was just a vacant lot there because it was in the suburbs, and it had burned. But yeah, Huntsville was the place. But to my knowledge, even in Huntsville, there's no recordings anywhere.
Interesting. I was never really around much of the music industry at all. But a couple of years ago, I drove through Muscle Shoals.
Oh.
So, as I'm driving in and see the sign, kind of had a special moment of respect. And then I didn't stop or anything. It was on my way to Florida.
Well, I mean, you may have heard me talk, with Brad or with you or wherever, just whenever, because our band loved rhythm and blues. And we loved the black artists, particularly. Not exclusively, but particularly. And that was during a time when R&B and Motown were linked together, okay? And we presumed to know better. And why I say that is because our musical mecca was the Stax studio in Memphis. STAX came from the name of the two founders. I think they were a brother and sister or cousin or something or other. One was named Axelrod, the last name, and the other one was, I can't remember. Anyway, that's where the Stax name came from. And what the Stax studio was an ex-movie theater on Macklemore Avenue in Memphis. And the local black kids would come in there and practice. They'd play instruments, they'd sing. And the two founders of the studio got the idea that they needed to record that and perhaps sell records and music that these people were making. And so they did. And we came to love the sound. We got to where we could identify the sound of the song that it came from Memphis, from Stax. Now, to a lesser degree, that was true with Muscle Shoals as well, because the same thing had happened in Muscle Shoals with different artists and so forth. But our favorite was the Stax Studios. And Sam and Dave, Wilson Pickett, Eddie Floyd, Otis Redding, Rufus and Carla Thomas. When they come out with a song, just from the sound, we knew it was recorded at Stax. And the reason we loved it so is that this was during a time when all that racial crap was going on in the South. And the Stax Studio Musical Band was Booker T and the MGs. And the Booker T and the MGs were four guys, two white, two black, that were the band behind all of these songs. There was some horns too, and there was another group, I think, called the Marqués that were behind that. But anyway, that sound we loved, and we loved the fact that it was two white guys and two black guys. Loved that. Matter of fact, if you watch the Blues Brothers movie with what's their names in it, Belushi and what's his name?
Dan Aykroyd, right?
Yeah, I mean
James Brown.
In that movie, the band is the Stax Studio Band. There's Steve Cropper is in that movie.
Yeah,
the guitar player. I don't know. I can't remember if Doug Dunn or Booker T is in there, or maybe the drummer was already dead by then. I don't remember.
I think Dunn was in there.
Okay. Anyway, that was to us. That was Jerusalem to Christians, or Mecca to Muslim.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were hard over on that. And we couldn't do, of course, a lot of their songs because we weren't good enough to do them. Now, Rick could sing some, and we did Midnight Hour by Otis Redding, and a couple of other things. But, I mean, Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett. And so, occasionally we would meet artists. Otis Redding came into the club in Atlanta one night when we were playing at one of the Atlanta clubs. Him and, the people he was with. Now, he didn't sit in or anything, but there was a buzz, and we were told Otis Redding, and Rick on the microphone announced that Otis Redding was here, whether he wanted it or not, because we were just, and that was shortly before he died in the plane crash.
I was trying to think of who else is in Blues Brothers. Aretha Franklin, obviously.
Oh, she was Muscle Shoals. I mean, she got her kick start from Muscle Shoals.
Cab Calloway was in there.
What
Ray
was
Charles.
that song she had at Muscle Shoals? God, I can't remember the song, but she had a song recorded at Muscle Shoals that really launched her career. It wasn't the one she's famous for, but it was the one that got her going. Yeah, what was that studio name? Fame, was that it? Fame Studio in Muscle Shoals? I can't remember.
No idea. Let me ask you, are you cold right now? Because
No, I'm not cold. My hands aren't cold because I'm doing this.
I had turned the heat off when I was getting things set up because I was in here in the sun, and I was already warming up.
Okay, I'm fine.
But I thought about it now just as the sun is shifting, and now I'm in the sun.
You see, I'm automatically like this because when I take them out, they get cold. Yeah, we've been going on for a good while. Now, I'm interested in you splicing up the original one and whether the splices lend themselves to being applicable to places in the book or not. Now, I'm sure this last conversation, some of it will definitely be applicable.
Mm-hmm.
Others won't. I'd have to figure out how to fill it in, and as long as I haven't printed up books yet, I can still do that.
It's up to you, of course. It's your book. But, I mean, I think that even if certain recordings don't fit in, I mean, maybe there's an appendix or something that has a few extra things.
Sure.
That way we're not throwing them away or not changing the nature of the book just to.
Hey, when Mark and his Karen come here, I'd like to bring them up here with Julie and show him your place and introduce you to him because he wants to meet you anyway. And I'd like him to see this place. He'd appreciate it. So would Karen.
Sure.
What time is it getting to be?
It's right about noon.
You want to go get something to eat?
Sure.
You got a favorite place?
Aunt Alice's, which is owned by the same people that own Goodfellas.
Let's go there.
Over on Main Street.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's go there.